and I think for listeners, it's always helpful to make it like real, like what it actually looks like. And, you know, I was thinking about last night when I have a sleep stuff that shows up from time to time. It gets worse when you are over 40. Here's the biopsychosocial model of sleep. Yes, hormones matter. So when I woke up in the night, because my neighbor's dog was barking, and it was this incessant barking, the dog kept on barking for an hour. And then my mind went and traveled through all the different, it's almost like when you are hungry and you go up to your cupboards and you just keep on looking through the different cupboards to find something to snack on. My mind went through every single cupboard of worry. And it started off with, worry about my son and his baseball game and, blah, blah, blah. And then it went into worry about Ukraine. And then it went into worry about, the Steve Hayes audio situation. It just went into every single possible worry. And then it landed on, oh no, what if I can't fall asleep? Which is the death of your sleep. As soon as you go to that worry, you're done for. Now you're never going to fall asleep, because now I have to fall asleep and I won't fall asleep. So I was thinking about, okay, what would be a process-based approach to just that everyday problem that most people have? The problem of the mind and the problem of the attempts to solve the problem that get us deeper in the problem.
Yeah, it is an amazingly common problem, as you know. And, psychological flexibility correlates with insomnia and those issues very, very well. And there's some pretty good evidence that it adds mindfulness training, psychological flexibility training adds somewhat to the programs that we have with regard to sleep. Mammals have been around for, a couple 100 million years, and they've been sleeping. They every night or every day, depending on whether they've been sleeping. Our body's really, really good at it. And then you got this recent, parasite called human language that's been around 400,000 years, 2.8 million years, trying to make us go to sleep on purpose by solving a problem. And that wakes us up. I mean, if you just look at the underlying neurobiology, when you were doing your sorting through the worry cupboard, your arousal systems were all 180 degrees from going to sleep. And then it landed on that sticky one because of content, because you didn't need to go to sleep. Do you know I've been playing around with this, because as you get older, you face this a lot more. I hate to be the one to tell you, but it's an old guy telling a younger person, this gets worse. I've actually found it really quite helpful to take some of these diffusion skills of just noticing your mind and begin to play with a space in which you can take them to the next level, in which it's no longer of any interest. It really feels like nothing. It's very hard to explain, because when you explain, you're going to do it with categorical words. But it's there in all the flexibility processes. I'm going to let me tell you a little story about emotion, and then I'll do the one on cognition, because cognition is almost even harder because we're talking about it in terms of using cognition. But I mentioned the tinnitus situation, and, have actually, oh, God,
tinnitus is ringing in the ears for those.
Ringing in the ears, and, it's just an old punk rocker standing in front of 60-foot tall speakers that are kicking out 200 decibels. This is not a good idea, because then when you get my age, you hear it. 24/7. It absolutely never, ever, ever stops. And when it first started showing up, I got the audiologist. They give us all this kind of goofy stuff, turn on noise generators, so you're used to the noise constantly. It doesn't help.
That was me with the earplugs with the dog barking. Now I have annoying earplugs in my ears. Didn't get rid of the dog. Yeah.
Well, when I finally had that suicidal thought, and I said, okay, wait a minute, Steve, so let's apply your wife's work. I went for a long walk, came back. I was probably 50% better after an hour walk. I said, I'm just going to apply psychological flexibility to noise. And here's where it landed. The upset around the noise eventually got to a point of, I don't care and you can't make me. There is a place where it isn't just accepting and open. It's like done, finished, disinterested. Mm-hmm. It's like the emotion. If you had emotion, it would be something like boredom. The kind of boredom that's so total that it has no interest whatsoever. Even your boredom's not interesting.
In Buddhism, they call that renunciation.
Yeah. And when you do
letting
that,
go.
It's like a switch or something. Something happens. I'm hearing my voice, my ears ring like crazy now. I haven't heard them in a month. Mm-hmm. They ring 24/7. I just don't give a damn. And you can't make me. Ha 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 ha. Well, the same thing cognitively in sleep. If you practice your diffusion skills, or you learn to watch your thoughts, there is a place you can go where there's a silence in thoughts. Let me say something, a little exercise people can do to try to notice it. If you just notice the thoughts that occur to you right now, the people who are listening to this podcast right now, not necessarily about what I'm talking about. Of course, I'm going to keep talking, but not constantly. I'll put in a few spaces so that you can do it. And I want you just to notice them rise and then fall. But now what I want you to notice is the betweenness. When they fall, they don't just start to something new. They go, and there's like a flat spot. It's like your breath in, and there's a flat spot before you breathe out. The thought occurs and rises and falls, and there's a flat spot. I'm going to be quiet just for about 10 seconds, and I want you to catch a flat spot. They don't last very long, but they're there. Do you see it? Mm-hmm. You know how not to think. You're not thinking all the time. And I don't mean this in a pejorative way that you tell your teenagers. You're not thinking. I'm not talking that way. I'm talking about you naturally know how to do nothing cognitively. So here's what I would say to the sleep problem. Mm-hmm. I heard this somewhere and it was actually soothing to me, and I've tried it and I think it's true. If you can hit a flat spot that's about 60 seconds long, you're going to go to sleep. Your body knows how to go to sleep. You just have to get your mind out of the way long enough. Now, of course, it'll wake you up again. I mean, you need the habits of mindfulness and the rest to calm the mind even when you're asleep. But just try it out as one thing to do. Work while you're lying there in the bed. Focus on the betweenness in your thoughts, not on your thoughts. And see if you can lengthen the betweenness just a littlest bit, but not by thinking. If you do it by thinking, you're putting something in the betweenness. You have to do it kind of by giving yourself an intentional set and then allowing that to sort of disappear, and then just allowing the attentional process to come, so that my intention is to expand the nothing, and then I'm going to watch for the nothing and see what happens. I've found that it's learning how to do nothing is a really, really important skill to sleeping, because your body knows how to sleep, but your mind doesn't.
Yeah, that skill is an interesting one, because if we were to look at what processes are involved there, in some ways it's an attentional flexibility process, where instead of focusing on going through the cupboards of my worry or the dog barking or what I should write in the text, back to the person, I'm paying attention to the flat spot. But that could apply to something like chronic pain, right? So we could do that, or it could apply to like your divorce and the pain of the resentment that you just are bombarded with every single day. When you wake up, you think about the resentment. There's a flat spot where that resentment doesn't exist. Or it could apply to working with your teenager, where you just like are kind of like they're driving you nuts by their impulsivity and craziness. There's a flat spot where they're not. So I could see that, and this is what I think, at least what I'm trying to do these days with these processes, is trying to make them applied to life where it's just super simplified. Like, okay, say it's my flat spot practice. How am I going to use my flat spot practice?
Love it. I love it.
In lots of different ways today, and getting better at it.
Flat spot.
Yeah.
Because
The flat spot.
you know, you see it in all of the flexibility processes. And if you take that thing like, chronic pain or the pain of a divorce or something like that, what the mind wants to do is to say, I need to subtract this pain.
Yeah.
But that's not a flat spot.
That's not a flat spot. No.
That's not a flat spot.
Yeah.
That is not spontaneously stepping into the silence.
Yeah.
It's trying to force it down so that you get silence, but that's very effortful. It's actually quite noisy. It's like, I've got to stop thinking in order to go to sleep. That's another thought, dude. This is the drop the rope kind of issue in classical act. If you're in a tug of war with a monster, that maybe what you need to do is drop the rope. The dropping the rope thing is not throwing the rope down or getting, it's really, it's doing nothing. And so in that little opens up a little gap in which life can happen and you can step in. In chronic pain, when you look, it's always there, but you don't always look. Notice the sound of the air system wherever you are, or if you're at a place where you're not running an air system, notice the sounds coming from outside wherever you are. And just notice that there's something there. There's sounds in the room you're in. And you weren't noticing them before. So is that in your voluntary control? Not if you're doing it with a subtractive purpose, because every time you check in to say, is it gone yet? It's back. If I were to check in on my sound of my ears, is it gone yet? It's back every single time within milliseconds. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a step beyond that. That really is silence. It's not the kind of silence that comes from no sound stimulation in the sense of the nervous system of your ear. In the same way, it's not the kind that comes from not having, a pain in some way, or memory of that betrayal or in a divorce, or, we're all being horrified by what we're seeing in the Ukrainian war, or it's different. Mm-hmm. It's that moment of peace where purpose and new possibility resides. And I think thinking of acceptance that way is a lot better. It's not that kind of tolerance resignation kind. It's the open to what's there. If you were to describe it, it wouldn't be a bad word to say it's not thing-like. There's no edges to it. Do you know the word nothing was originally written as 2 words? There's a part of you that just is, and there's no edges to it. If there's no edges to it, it's not thing-like. You're not consciously aware of the limits of your consciousness. And so exploring the nothing, not the depressive, oh dear, there's nothing, but the flat spot there. There's a peaceful place from which you notice, and that part of you doesn't have a stake in all this drama. That part of you is not fighting for the right to exist, is not struggling with the barking dog or the pain in your toe or the thoughts about not sleeping or all the things we've been talking about, or Ukrainian war or whatever. It's not that those things aren't present. It's just that there's a person present. You're present, and you're more than all of that. You're the cup that holds that, not just what's poured into that cup.
I think we all could use a little bit more of that in our lives right now. The space between the doing. You have a little bit more consciousness in your decision making.
One of the cool things that's happening with process-based therapy and so forth, ACT is being very dominantly used now in psychedelic therapy. And one reason why that's important is here are these chemicals that, not alone, but with guidance, have been used for many thousands of years by every indigenous people, one form or another, in which that kind of flat spot self shows up. And what mediates outcomes from psychedelic therapy when you're using it with things like trauma and things like that, things like a sense of an oceanic awareness, a sense of oneness and connection across time, place, and person, of seeing yourself in a really profoundly different way. And part of what's cool about the psychedelic therapy work is that we're able to do things like fMRI studies and so forth. We can't do that normally with spiritual experiences. 98% of the population says they have spiritual experiences like that. By the way, if you ask the questions properly, almost everybody sooner or later has these moments of sudden change in time, connection with others, sense of universality, etc. Could we use these things to understand some of what people can learn how to do through meditation, through their psychotherapy work? And it opens up a place in which that flat spot world, we've created something here together.
The flat spot, yeah.
A place in which possibility, new possibilities can occur. You can see things that you wouldn't see before. And, it's one step at a time. So it's not like you're going to be fixed by that, repaired by that. You're empowered by that. And living the life that will put you on a journey that allows that possibility to unfold. We're back to the story of my son and maybe a little bit about what we did when I was 70, or what you're trying to do with your podcast, one step at a time. Let's see.
Yeah. I have a good friend that she says to herself, you're not that important. Kind of remind her, that you're not that important. And I kind of would add, and you are that important. You're both. You're not that important. And that's what the flat spot helps you see, is that, all of this isn't that important. And it's just, worry mind or whatever, resentment mind or whatever I'm caught in. And I am that important.
Yeah, the language of nothing, because it's that without distinction.
Yeah.
It's not I'm nothing. It's that without distinction. And there's another word for it, which would be everything. And so it's that paradox is built in that flat spot place is the possibility that's expansive. It can go everywhere because you're attaching into something that's universal, that is timeless. You're part of something a lot bigger than what your mind says.
If you were to kind of summarize your hopes for where this process-based work is headed, for those of us that want to help you share it, what would be those hopes?
Well, I think we need a cultural conversation around the world of letting go with top-down normative categories that have been put atop us and are ill-fitting suits. And I haven't talked much about that dirty history, but it goes back to eugenics. The fathers of statistics and the ones who gave us normal and glorified normal and then gave us the bell curve and glorified the tips of the distribution were trying to sort people into those who are worthy of having children and those who weren't. And so we've put that toxic idea everywhere. And we live inside those stories from the very earliest days, whether it's my sons will never be, or I'm so great and grand, or I'm gifted and talented. I've got this disorder, I've got that disorder, etc. If instead we begin to talk about the processes that empower people and have words for discovering what those are, I think we're not very far away from a time where what's happening with young people, which is that they know they can have it their way. They weren't socialized into you had to listen to the radio station. You create your own. Or that you have to buy just this brand of clothes. I mean, he and she is falling apart. Gay and straight is falling apart. It's all falling apart because when you get down to empowering individuals, it's more a matter of who are you and what are you trying to do? And what if what you care about, what if you feel, what if your history matters? Not just to you, but to the world. What if it matters to empower people one at a time and give them the tools they need. Conceptually, explore this area of mindfulness and psychological flexibility and other processes as well, but I mentioned those two because they're the biggest dogs in the pen from what we know. It's really important. Begin to look with more mindful awareness of when you're deploying those skills in your life, moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day. And just give a little bit of a glance towards, what do you really want? I mean, if you really want relationships that work, or if you really want a sense of peace of mind, or if you really want not to struggle with your trauma history, or if you really, you name it, consider the possibility that your own life is giving you constant little indications this would work better than that. And you just watch. I have worked for most of my life on just dealing with my own weight. And I eventually came to this point. I did some of the earliest weight control stuff, behavior therapy stuff with my colleague and good friend, Kelly Brownell.
I was going to say, that must have been Kelly Brownell.
Yeah, we did research together, working together on weight versus not.
Who's now working on stigma.
Yeah, absolutely. He surely is.
He moved from the weight loss to the stigma, which is good.
Well,
go ahead.
My lab has done some really great studies in stigma and stuff. Mm-hmm. And Kelly, I just was talking to him last week. He's a Time 100 guy. If you never look at it, Google him. He's a monster down at Duke. One of the things that I've learned now is it's a lot better for you to try different things with not just weight, but how you eat, when you eat, and how it lands, because it's quite idiosyncratic. People have different ways. It isn't like one diet will do it or one way will do it. And begin to do what works. And the example I was going to use is I found that if I was eating an apple and walnuts in the morning, I wasn't hungry for a long time. And I just noticed that over a period of just trial and error. And so I asked my wife, apples and walnuts are something I eat a lot of. Here comes a randomized trial on my life's work, acceptance and commitment therapy, focused on weight loss. Good outcomes by adding a little thing, and what it was walnuts. And I said, man, this is funny. I'm not saying eat walnuts. I'm just saying, you probably know, hey, if I eat this, I get more hungry. Well, or you probably know, if I exercise this way, I don't hurt. If I do it regularly, I get this. You probably know, if I actually open this difficult door with my wife, the relationship moves forward. Even though it's difficult, my mind's telling me, don't do it, don't do it. And on it goes in every area of your life. So I think where we're headed with the process-based vision is stop categorizing people, start empowering people. Take what we know in science and do a much better job of doing this one at a time, process focused. You yourself don't have to wait. You can do it now by just bringing a mindful eye to what life is whispering to you about what works in the domains that you deeply care about. And using, things that science says, probably worth learning these skills, but not in this rigid, mindy way of, oh God, I haven't been accepting today, Turn it into a gentle uplifting of the person that you are and the kind of life you yearn for, and see where that takes you.
Yeah. What you just described with Kelly Brownell, the reason why I knew his name was that 2002, when I was accepted to graduate programs, I chose between Kelly Brownell and Linda Craighead.
Wow.
And Kelly Brownell was doing weight loss, behavioral weight loss. Linda Craighead was doing appetite awareness training.
Right.
And at that time, the Yale graduate program was prestigious, and Kelly Brownell was huge. And I checked in with myself and I asked, what do I know is true for me from my own history of recovery around what I want to study and where I want to go with this? So I went with Linda. and studied interoceptive awareness of appetite. And at that time, it was like, what is this stuff? Right. And then added in, DBT and ACT and mindfulness and yada, yada. But that's the thing, is that some of us we don't do that check-in, or we don't take the choice that's the less prestigious one, but actually is the right one. And that is, for many of us, it's like, that's letting the ego go a little bit and doing, like, eating the walnut, not because someone told you to eat the walnut, because your body said walnuts. that settles right for me. And for someone else, it's not a walnut. They give me canker sores. So sorry, I can't do any walnuts. But
That's a wonderful story. And I know both those people well, and they're wonderful people. And you had a really good choice either way you went.
Yeah.
But I absolutely understand that choice. And it was brave of you. And, forward looking, because a lot of things have happened there in that whole space that Linda was a part of. And
and she was a woman mentor with kids, and that was the other part, so anyways, the choices we make in our life, trust yourself, is some of the messaging around that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Stephen Hayes. I really appreciate you and the work that you've done to change my life, my clients' lives, the many lives across the world that don't even know that you've changed them. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Went in some interesting places, and I especially appreciate your willingness just to go there. So I'm leaving with some new thoughts and some feeling as though, we're connected in some way, and the larger community maybe is connected in some way, and who knows where that can go. So
yeah,
thank you for that.
Good. I'll see you at ACBS.
Yeah.
San Francisco. Okay, take care.
Take care.